Chapter 23. Tessa rushed over to see what he was screaming about. The field of grass lay peacefully before them. Off in the distance, she thought she could make out the round hump of the top of their airplane, but it looked totally undisturbed. Far beyond that, there were woods, and, even beyond that, a glimmer of water. Tessa saw nothing that was the least bit upsetting. "What's your problem?" Deck asked, in the exasperated tone that people used with tantrum-throwing toddlers. "It's all wrong," Gideon exclaimed, shaking his arms for emphasis, his hands in the air surrender pose transformed from showing meekness to signaling fury. "Everything in sight. I know where we are. This should be the main air traffic control tower for the largest military airbase in Shargo. Out there." He gestured wildly toward the field of grass. "There should be dozens and dozens of runways, one huge square of concrete after another. And over there," he pointed at the woods, "that should be on-base housing for hundreds of pilots. And beyond that," he gestured more broadly, indicating a farther distance, "we should be able to see skyscrapers. Skyscrapers! Do either of you see any skyscrapers?" "No. But don't you think that means you're probably confused?" Tessa asked hesitantly. "I'm not confused. Something's really, really wrong here," Gideon screamed back at her. A bird starting to fly in the window saw his waving arms and flew back out. "Keep your voice down," Deck hissed at them. "And tell us why we should believe you and not believe what we see with our own eyes." Gideon pointed toward the curve of the water near the horizon. "That's Lake Mish," he said. "And over there, see that line of blue heading to the lake? That's the Shargo River. I know this landscape. That's exactly how Lake Mish and the Shargo River are. I've looked at this area a million times on spy satellite footage. I've done hundreds of simulation attack plans flying over it. I've done simulations dropping bombs on this very tower." "Simulations," Deck said, "not real." Gideon glared at her. "In simulations," he said, "everything is as real as they can make it without actually having the planes in the air." Tessa was staring out at the field of grass, thinking about the weird way the gravel was scattered all over it. She gasped. "What would happen," she said, "if people just abandoned a bunch of runways or any area where there's a lot of concrete? After a while, wouldn't it crack? Wouldn't grass start growing up in the cracks?" She could remember seeing this back home in Waterford City, the way untended parking lots always sprouted weeds. And then wouldn't the roots of the grass start breaking up the concrete until eventually it's nothing but gravel? "You think the enemy would abandon their biggest airfield?" Asked incredulously. "You think they'd abandon Shargo? Why?" "Hey," Deck said, "maybe our side's really winning. Maybe we've already won." Tessa thought about everything they'd seen flying over enemy territory. "Maybe they just show you the old footage for simulations," she said, "just for your practice. Remember back on the plane when you were getting all upset about seeing nothing but trees? There was one spot where I thought I saw something brick alongside one of those trees, like an old chimney, maybe." "There was a bombing raid here yesterday morning," Gideon reminded her. "A tree can't grow out of a chimney in one day." "Yeah, and according to the computer, there was a bombing raid right on top of us this morning down by Santal," Tessa countered. "Sometimes computers can be wrong." "I wasn't going to tell you this," he said in a hoarse voice. "Remember that video I showed you of the people dying in my bombing raid, in the battle I fought in?" "Yes," Tessa said very gently, because somehow that seemed like the right way to speak to Gideon right now. "Well, I was never supposed to see that. We pilots don't have that kind of security clearance," he said. "I had to hack my way in." "Huh," Deck grunted. "And here I had you pegged as a total straight arrow military type. Not that much of a rule breaker. Definitely not a hacker." Gideon didn't even glance her way. "I had to see what I'd done," he said pleadingly. "What I'd caused. What I was responsible for." "Okay," Tessa said soothingly. "But, so that's proof, Gideon said. "What we saw of the raid here in Shargo, that's what the generals see. It's real. It's not some made-up simulation for fake pilots." He hit the wall again and twisted his head about even more crazily, his face going even more wild-eyed. He flinched just at the sight of the peaceful grass, the peaceful trees. He looked like he might do anything, jump out the window or attack Tessa and Deck or just collapse in a heap of huge, soul-racking sobs. "Calm down," Deck said. She took a step toward him, her hands up in the air in a gesture that was clearly supposed to show that she, at least, was no threat. It was the same way someone might approach a dangerous animal. "What do you know about any of this?" Gideon asked bitterly. "Nothing," Deck admitted. She took another step closer. "But I'm sure there's some explanation, something we haven't thought of because we don't have enough information. You know that's how the military works. The people at the top only tell the people at the bottom certain things, just enough to get them to do what they want." Tessa expected Gideon to argue with this. If nothing else, she wanted him to say, "I wasn't someone at the bottom. I'm the hero." But he only shrugged, probably grinding more of the bird droppings into his white uniform. That's how the black market rings work too, Dick admitted. Sometimes, if you're sneaky enough, you can find things out people don't want you to know. She flashed him a grin. But you already know that, if you were hacking into a top secret video. Gideon didn't answer. Dick kept inching toward him. The thing is, other times you just have to make do, she said. All you can do is pick a course of action based on what you do know, what seems most likely to keep you alive. She reached Gideon's side and put a steadying hand on his arm. She tugged him gently around to face the window once again. This is one of those times. Do you see anything out there that looks like a jet fuel tank? Gideon raised a shaking hand and pointed toward the right, to a place where the grass was short and stubby rather than long and flowing. In all the simulations, he said dully, the fuel tanks were underground, right about there. We we got bonus points if we dropped the bombs in a way that cracked the concrete, made the tanks explode. I did that once. That's how I got promoted, how I got qualified to go on real bombing raids. Dex started to pull him back from the window, but he locked his muscles in place. He kept staring out at the peaceful grass with a haunted look on his face, as if his eyes were showing him an entirely different scene. That's how I qualified to kill people, he said. Deck patted his arm. Okay, she said. It's okay. All that's over now. Gideon turned and looked at her as if she just told him the biggest lie of all.